This is a collection of poems and short stories that I've been writing on my off days from work. August 18th, 2024, 6:30 p.m. Today the cells in my cheeks rejoiced. On this fateful Sunday, no different from any other, they were baptized in an auspicious remedy. The saline from my eyes washed across the crevices of my lips and down to the trough of my face. Yesterday I found myself riding towards not one, but two rainstorms. Oh boy, did the water caress my skin, leaving no part of my body dry. And when I finally did dry, here comes storm number two. Well, here comes me, 80 miles per hour directly into the eye. I'd probably sooner end up blown away from a gust of wind than touched by the precipitation. If you ride fast enough, the water doesn't really touch you. So I rode through the rain, uproar of thunder, listening to whatever autoplays after Caleb Giles' meditations. I'll make it home and just watch the water pause for a second. The gale always seems to subside when I make it to my destination. I guess the weather cares more about the journey than where it ends up. Far distant water culminated miles away, just to end up landing on me and mine. The clouds collided and faded to a fine vapor around my surroundings, coating me in whatever culture they witnessed. How honorable. How I wish they had brought the windbreaker I usually keep in my bag. I think I took it out for aerodynamics. Realistically, I just didn't like the way it bunched up on my back whenever it settles down back there. Fighting against the revolution of proper storage optimization, struggling against the machine. Expanding to obtain as much cubic space as possible. When I got home, I stripped it all off, so it was just a wet t-shirt and some pants I usually skate in anyway. Tossed them in the washing machine and be forgotten about, till it's time to take care of more important laundry. Honestly, everything was dry by the time I got inside. I could have ran around a bit more, just to have some type of history on me. But yesterday it was hot, and I was already covered in sweat anyway. Made my own rain all by myself. While I was out there in the midst of it all, I had to open my visor a few times just to let some of the steam out. The water touched my face, but I didn't mind. What I did mind was all the kickback from the vehicles I was riding behind. Who knows what they've driven through and still plan to. Around them I go, in between if I have to. No sense in waiting somewhere where I'm not needed. Never did my weather app say it was supposed to rain at all. You'd think I'd be used to it by now. The limits of the smartphone actualized only by how limited the humans who send data to them are. To rain or not to rain, it will eventually, and probably in a few minutes. And as soon as it will, it'll be closer to have never have, all in the same. I'd say yesterday overall was wholly unproductive. Not much was gained except the loss of another day. Started off as many of my second days off. Teeth brushed, breakfast almost missed, video games played, floor attended to, as I wonder what I even want from life. There's so much comfort in a medium pile rug. 2 p.m. turned to 4:47 p.m. It was finally time to set out what I planned to have done by noon. I paid myself for it about a week ago and loaded my Starbucks app with, counting the pre-existing $3 and odd cents, enough to get 3 of what I like to call coffee milkshakes. I'd visit a friend, get my reward for making it another weekend, and swim at my parents' house all within 3 hours, and be back in my own part of town with just enough time to hit the skate park. Navigating through traffic was as fun as ever. I'd normally complain if I was in a boring car, though a little less if I was in my car. I tend to get a couple compliments for sitting in traffic. But when I'm on my motorcycle, I find it fun just weaving in between heavy traffic and disappearing down yet another rolling hill that compromises almost the entirety of I-75. My friend ended up on my side of town, something I was aware of before I headed to his side of town, but held a kernel of optimism in my mind that maybe he would be back by the time I made it out to his side. The first Starbucks I visited ran out of ice and not even fathom agitating milk, let alone shaking it enough to make my coffee milkshake. So to another Starbucks I went. Ironically, Starbucks was even closer to my forlorn friend's house. Gas that I could not afford was burned haphazardly, and I'll pay it back soon. Eventually I made it to my parents' house. They didn't live too far from the second Starbucks I ended up at. I toured the neighborhood because even though I was only there a few weeks ago, somehow ended up being a few weeks since I visited them. I'm usually better at making out to that end of town to see them. I still work in the same area for crying out loud, but time slips endlessly. Another hot knife carves through the plastic days that litter the calendar. Unfortunately for me, it was the weekend and neither of them were home. I should have known when they didn't answer their phones. Usually they're tending to the yard or tucked away in the theater room around 6 p.m. on these kind of days, and it was 6 p.m. on one of those kind of days. I thought maybe I could go for a quick swim despite them not being home, but the thought of being wet away from soap and incandescent lighting just didn't fancy me at the time. 6:34 p.m. I could motor home really quickly and still have time to skate, I thought. Nothing left for me around here for today. I'll squander all the resources from this little street, at least till maybe next weekend. I visited the park I visited when it first opened back in 2017. It's about a 5-minute drive from my parents' house, 8 if you're watching for all the deer in the nighttime. 6:40 p.m. and I circle the parking lot in indecision. I've been to every corner of this park. It was my escape spot when I was too lazy to or economically self-conscious to wait in traffic en route to the other parking lots 20 odd minutes away. I could walk this park with my eyes closed. I have my Nikon D3 with me, the camera nobody can disrespect in my presence, so I decided to see if anything new had changed since I had last truly visited, you know? I ended up on the same trail as many others have before me, myself included. A young woman was walking with 2 medium-sized dogs in the same direction as me. I walked quicker though. I ended up passing her. I don't think the larger of the dogs was too happy about that. For her in exchange, I cleared every spider web I came across. I used my face in honor and silence. Towards the end of my quest to find something out of the ordinary, I shared a moment in time with a deer. It was about my height, shared the same color iris as me. I didn't see it at first, so I was looking directly into the sunset as it also was, but behind me. It stopped grazing for a second and we shared a moment. Also short moment in time, and then it fled into the trees and brush like I wish I could sometimes. The night ended as uneventful as it began. I worked away at a pot pie that I made the night before that was far too much for one single person. I thought the bourbon I had would make it a far less formidable opponent that night. I could eat an entire $4 frozen pizza when I'm drunk. How hard could a pot pie be in comparison? Still Snickers from afar, tucked on the second shelf of my fridge while I top away. This at work. The fight isn't lost yet. Postpone the decay. Still have time left. Today my eyes washed the dust and debris from my face. The streams formed a concave and took away all that I didn't know bothered me. It marked almost the entire year I went without crying. Not that I've been trying to. Something finally came to me. I'm glad it did. September 1st, 2024. Sometimes, when I stand really still for a moment, in a moment where I have nothing else to do, my brain takes me somewhere far into the future. I'm shapeless and gray, and all the sadness in my heart ceases to exist. There's an explosion coming soon, I think, but I'm never answered. It wouldn't change much. I can be at a red light or drying my hair after a shower, and my mind is delivering me to peace. My own version of peace, where there's quiet and nobody is debating the legitimacy of corn. For a minute it gives me sheer terror, and I'll cry if I remember it out too. Then as quickly as it comes, it leaves and I'm left with a bit of hope. There's a temple in my mind. I know one day this paradise will come true, and the destruction of all mankind shortly after. I smile. September 10th, 2024. I talk to this notes app like the friends I used to have, and I share secrets only my little hands could utter. My real words don't work, what more could I say? I load them up into my digital throat and spray it, not say it, till eventually it makes sense. One day it'll make sense. I used to be able to talk with real words, real people, but if I tried today, I would be talking to myself, and the verdict isn't still out yet on the legitimacy of that all. If I tried yesterday, I would be in the same boat as today. There used to be people, I'm pretty sure. Maybe they're wondering where I went, wondering why it takes so long to become, wondering when I'll figure out if I can't in time, before it's too late to reply. There goes January, and then August. Somewhere. One day I have loads of money, and I have loads of people to talk to, and I will speak to them at length of what it's like to have loads of money, and the money will buy me loads of people to talk to. I will tell them how I became a skeleton, because I wanted loads of money, and they will listen to my money from a skeleton. I will be a talking skeleton, because that's how I make my money. I get paid to be a skeleton and to talk, and they get paid to listen to a skeleton talk. I made all my money and now I'm a skeleton, and it's okay, because loads of people listen to my skeleton, and that's the only reason I made loads of money. September 16th, 2024. You've seen me. You've seen me. You saw me once that night when you looked off the coast and the clouds grew, when they billowed up and formed their own personal penthouse right below the heavens. The dim twilight turned to a fiery amber, and the black smoke tripped over its feet as it ran towards the back of your neck. I know one day I'll no longer crave destruction. I know when I look into your eyes, and you knew it was true when you puffed up your sternum and failed to keep me in your abdomen. I've been around you your whole life, and I will be here long after, to take, to never ask for anything. Your forefathers tried to give me handouts, and I took their breaths right before they were destined to die, and I danced on their graves right before I traveled off to Mesopotamia with the seed in my grasp. Fear me when it's quiet outside, you know what comes next. I'll live under your eyelids, right in between that narrow void space. You've seen me. You've seen me. September 19th, 2024. Every morning I open my eyes, a far-off horn sings the song of a calm rebellion. Every morning I open my eyes, I'm fighting back against the tide. I think I like being exhausted. September 21st, 2024. Farewell today. I shall see you tomorrow. In my memories, maybe you'll wear a brighter face, and your frown will be turned upside down, and if not, that's how I'll remember you anyway. And there's not a thing you can do to change my mind. September 22nd, 2024. There's a gray splatter in the corner of my room that started on the edge of my bed. 2.5 feet in diameter, a viscous liquid, and it grows by 1/32nd of an inch every morning I get home from work. It oozes with its microscopic feet outward in every direction. Soon it will hit the wall, and I have no choice but to crawl up it like the kudzu in the east and shrouds all the abandoned homes, insulating them from any attempt of repopulation. No more than a fingernail's thickness as blemishes, but it's cool to the touch and burns over time like a simmering pot. I've been let down so many times that I am becoming let down. I now talk to random people and fill them with grand dreams of success and external fortitude. I talk it up for weeks at a time. You will be one. I sometimes see it in their eyes, a shard of hope. Hope is like a diamond or pyrite. It needs to be refined before it means anything. Some ways like a good script. So I gather the resources that are required, the heat of a fall sun, time, and whatever their definition of kindness feels like, and I deliver them their own truth. A truth that only exists to us two in this world. A truth that I will yank from their grasp right as it is being written into a priori. Because I am let down is all I know. To the same effect, I let down objects. Glass shatters when it leaves my hands. The crunch reminds me of a sweet breakfast cereal, how I rotted my teeth in the same. Weights feel a bit heavier until around me I let down gravity. The ground sinks beneath my feet. This is now who I am. I am let down and light leaves my presence. It too weighs a ton. The gray splatter covers my kitchen and shadows the back window. It's all let down now. I am weightless and without patience. September 28th, 2024. I like vacationing in people's lives. Sometimes I lay on the beach of their minds. Sometimes I rent bicycles and visit the landmarks of their thought cabinets. It's fun being a tourist. Someone that's here today to spend my foreign existence in their memories. I come by my little Zeppelin for a day or a week and maybe I might make you feel something. Soon, I must return home, far away from anything you believe in. A place you're not allowed to visit. A place that must remain separate so that these worlds don't homogenize. So don't get attached at all to my presence, because I have many more lives to visit. While I sweep the debris from my lodging to make it like I was never there, you won't remember me much, neither my name nor shape. But I have the records, and my next flight leaves soon. Europe is just a stop on my long itinerary. September 30th, 2024. The other week I worked the code. And for those that don't know what a code is, the code is when the heart stops pumping for itself for whatever reason and the body shuts down. The layman knows a code as a cardiac arrest or heart attack to really get to the basement of its meaning. I was at a location that my station frequents often, a nursing home. A senior citizen prison funded off the backs of their own social security. The patient was someone of an age that I'm not sure whom was left for years to deal with an ailment that I was not informed of, or it mattered very little to me. My job was to pump on the sternum where ribs once existed. I had become my patient's heart for the next 20 minutes maximum. Staying alive, staying alive. That was the rhythm I was taught to pump at. One of my partners was in charge for breathing for the patient, the easier of the jobs. Another was in charge of securing venous access using a handy little drill that intrudes directly into the long flat bone right below the kneecap. Another was in charge of holding the fluid bag that flowed like a casual stream into this new access we made below the kneecap. A job best suited for the taller personnel. The main medic in charge of directing the entire scenario. And one last firefighter there to switch off whenever someone needed a break. The nursing home is a dreary state, no better illuminated in the pre-dawn dew of 5 in the morning. The rooms are lit by desk-side warm bulb lamps that cast awkward shadows on anyone that walks in front of them. The floors and walls are painted a speckled off tan with sugar, enhanced in between these awkward shadows to form a sort of yellow that you find when you leave a triangle of Parmesan cheese in the fridge for too long. Broad daylight leaves the same effect. I mean, it could be 5 p.m. on a sunny day and the inside of this room will look no different. A lot of patients in this facility are bedridden. Some are in a mind state so far away from the rest of their body that they probably don't mind the conditions that they're in. Others are found often asking for help, their calls breaking through that static buzz of whatever local TV show is playing in the corner of their room. There might be a regal side to this building, a part where the walls are bright green and the occupants that reside in them are content. And I wouldn't know. We don't get calls to that side if it does exist because those people wouldn't need our help. About 8 minutes after we arrived, 13 minutes after CPR began, suction became an urgent matter. And all the fluids we pumped into his body and all the ones that existed before we arrived were looking for a way to escape. No cuts, no emergency exit, only up and out of the tube that we used to create an airway for this patient. A syrupy red solution that smelled like the bottom of your stomach right before it reaches the intestines has seeped against gravity with every pressing of the chest wall. By now I was in charge of breathing for the patient using my hand and the little bag connected to this airway tube. In charge of breathing, in charge of suction. With this cute battery-powered machine, I vacuumed the inner living room of this patient's existence. And I watched this reddish solution become contained in a fun little capsule right beside me. The entire time this patient was watching me with their eyes open. No life behind them. If I ever reach the age where it's time to be shipped off to a nursing home, I'd much rather be left somewhere deep in the woods. Maybe by then my mind will have deteriorated enough for me to truly become in touch with nature. No more worrying about being annoyed by mosquitoes. Maybe I'll be able to shrink down to the size of an ant, get a nice paying job manning the doors of their ant-sized Home Depot. I'll check their ant-sized receipts as they walk out of the door. It's hopefully a bit larger than an ant, so they can fit through it. I'll watch them get into their ant-sized cars and drive off to complete whatever ant-based construction tasks they purchase materials for. Maybe laws will progress far enough, or more euthanasia will have been legalized. Just crush me with a hammer until the light on the other end of the tunnel shines on my wrist, and I'll thank you for it in a scream. While we were working our little code, trying to bring life back to this person, whether they wanted it or not, another one had been dispatched not too far from us. In fact, it was dispatched in the station's territory, or our station's territory. Our territory is just the area operating within a certain distance from our station. We respond to whatever call we're sent on, but dispatch prioritizes sending us the calls in our territory first. And it's kind of frowned upon if we aren't the first ones to make it, to the calls out in our territory, or if we're available, like leaving the hospital and we don't pick these calls up. We were currently working a code outside of our territory, but only barely. It's in a place where we're at more frequently than not, actually. This other cardiac arrest is being responded to by the other half of our station and the ambulance half of the closest station to our territory. We had actually been to this house earlier, about 3 hours earlier, and when it came over the radio, I ignored the address like I do most of the time. It's all static to me anyway. I did pick up on the fact that there was a simultaneous cardiac arrest being worked out. Life is funny like that. I didn't think it was before today, but I did very soon after. We were at the location of cardiac arrest number 2 for a patient who had found themselves awake in the middle of the night with an interruption to their regular breathing. We responded about as routine as any other call, speeding through red lights with our own red lights. My personal favorite part of the job, By the time we arrived to the home, our patient was breathing about as good as you or I, sitting in the kitchen waiting to be told the results of our findings, looking for answers on why they felt the way they did. Everything we could do out in the field came back inconclusive to any immediate tragedy. Patient had no major evidence of any grievances from their past life sneaking back into their current one. They were sitting in the chair completely fine when we arrived and completely fine when we left. And they were dead by 6 a.m., 3 hours later. When one works a cardiac arrest, many drugs are used on scene. Epinephrine, the hormone that the body produces to jumpstart the heart in times of critical need, fight or flight, or adrenaline, is best known. Electrolytes like calcium, magnesium, and we'll use Narcan if we suspect an overdose, and a bunch of other drugs. Well, they're outside of my scope of practice. Those are more for the paramedic. When we're done with these arrests, these drugs must be replenished at our local hospital's pharmacy before we can go back into service, in case we must do it all again an hour or so later. When we arrived at the hospital is where I learned the news. 6 a.m. or a bit earlier, to give credit to the doctor in charge, was when the time of death was declared on a perfectly healthy patient we had visited 3 hours earlier. The ambulance crew asked us if we had been to that address that we were at previously that day, and it rang no bells in my mind at the time. My partner immediately knew, though, and the news turned his world upside down just a few seconds before it turned my world upside down. I had many questions at the time. How? Why? What? I was still partially asleep. We had only been up for about an hour, and I think I was off about 3 hours of sleep. And we had told the patient that although there was nothing immediately wrong that we could see when we were there, it's still best that they visit the hospital, whether by ambulance or by any other means. The patient's partner offered to drive them immediately after we had left, and we made the promise that the patient would. 2 hours later, they were still at home, and one person was more alive than the other. Me and my partner both had our theories what may happen. The patient did state that they were in an accident earlier that day, and although they didn't have any external injuries that we could see or that they could see, I personally suspected that there was some type of internal damage. My partner, who had a little bit more experience, as he had been working there for several more years before me, he expected a patient had a history of high blood pressure, which we were told that stressing about not being able to breathe and this earlier car wreck, perhaps they had some sort of clot that limited the blood to their brain. Patient had no history of sleep paralysis, and on scene seemed to be what they were describing. I thought my solemn wisdom of the topic would alleviate their stress on the situation if it happened again. I guess it never will have a chance to. I thought about this death more for longer than I honestly should have. I've seen people die, have died, and will die soon, but this was my first time seeing someone that I didn't know would die. Would I even have had any advice to offer them if I knew they would have? I had previously stared to the abyss behind the retinas of someone that I was actively trying to bring back to life. All I could think of was his patient's partner, and how they must have felt now. They made a promise to drive the patient to the hospital and get him checked out. Well, they didn't. The patient arrived by our department's means. The station I would have been at a month ago. Less alive than before they were born. On the drive back, in between all the what and it doesn't make sense, did it start to dawn on me. Life really is a comedy. If the universe can spit us out and put us in our cute little cars, putter around town and make a name for ourselves so swiftly, and just make us stop without any care in the world, what does it really matter if we think it's so serious? I could believe any mishap that comes my way was destined in the cards long before I had the last name to grow into. Or I can believe that as quick as I can swat a gnat off my glass of orange juice, can the universe or whatever higher sense make us stop breathing? What sense is there to not laugh? I think that shit is fucking hilarious now. I've been heartbroken at least 6 times this year, and now I just laugh at it, because who cares? I laugh when I wake up, and I laugh when my shoe comes untied as I walk down the street. And when the day comes where my brain expires before my body, and I'm being bashed in the skull with those hammers, don't allow me to beg for mercy. I already made that decision a long time ago. Demand me to laugh. Command me to get the last laugh before the universe. Breathe down existence in a fiery bellow of jubilance. The world can laugh back at me if it wants. I'll already be dead, and I won't give a solitary fuck. October 7th, 2024. Most days I find myself living in a world that's half between reality and a daydream. Well, not necessarily a daydream, because it's not exactly a place of reprieve, but somewhere just a bit further out of reach than whatever I find myself waking into. Sometimes it feels like that's what I'm actually awaking in. Like when you don't entirely get that last bit of REM sleep, so all the crust stays in your eye instead of sliding to the corner for removal in the morning. Yeah, maybe my existence doesn't fully awaken, so I'm stuck in that limbo realm. Where I can see myself talking to people from behind my shoulder in a third-person camera, wondering what I'll say next and why I chose to say it that way. Sometimes when I'm doing well, it feels like I'm watching 2 normal people engaging in some type of friendly verbal scrimmage. 2 teams from some foreign place going back and forth like the opening act before the band I actually came to see perform goes on. No encore. I see myself walking away slightly more awkward than I was before. What a funny guy. I think in this third existence, the one where the breeze hugs the leaves on the maple trees so gently, and it's always autumn, but the leaves never shed. This is where I'm actually from. Maybe that's where my people reside. Some days I feel like I'm competing with being humans. All the emotions I'm supposed to have, but just can't seem to locate. Maybe I left it in the storage unit back with my home reality. I feel like it would explain a lot. All the signs on the side of the highway that advertise something that I'm supposed to care about. So distracting. So disgusting. And I think I'm the only one that finds they don't fit anymore. An outdated piece of technology that's still clinging on that makes no wave in the emotions of anyone I mention it to. Maybe they don't have street signs where I'm from, and I'm just trying to make things more like home. Maybe they don't need street signs where I'm from, because we all know where home is just by feeling it out. I'm welcome there, and so is everyone else. No fighting to think of something to say. I'm not weird there after all. I definitely feel unhuman on this earth. I'm figuring out the puzzle, and I'm learning I just don't fit in, because I'm not supposed to. Maybe they kicked us all out of this paradise we resided in. Rent must have gone up too high or something, and they just wanted to build a parking lot on top of our paradise. I wonder where all my other pieces went. My selfish wishes that one of them was unlucky enough to land on this planet with me. And I'll search for them every day, because we don't need to be alone. October 9th, 2024. A rough recollection of all the things I thought about earlier, but I didn't have time to write down yet. A lot of men use the gym as a place to work on themselves after something tragic happens in their lives, whether that be a breakup or something more severe like a death of a loved one or their past selves. I used to think it was just a way of burning extra energy that would otherwise go somewhere less productive, like anger or bitterness. That dopamine release after surpassing some set lift goal or running just a bit further than before that turns the will of desire in the mind. I know motion and physical activity leads to a dopamine release, but I think there's something deeper depending on the person. For me, the gym is the second thing I do on my first day off of work, except on Sundays. I don't work out on Sundays. I get home and my body remembers I'm close enough to my home base to use the toilet. And then I hit the gym before I shower and start my day. I don't really find much introspection while I'm on the toilet. And my brain saves it all for the gym for some reason. It's the place I go to decompress from whatever kind of day I had the shift before, no matter how tired I am. And no matter how tired it'll make me. I want breakfast tacos today. So American of me to want something that appears to be international but was probably made down the street and barely shares any resemblance from where it's from. It's not a special day of any kind. I guess I just don't want the cereal I already have in my kitchen today. I want to go outside and buy ingredients and spend money for food that may end up being too much to eat for me just in the days before it expires. I need a different kind of sausage. A kind different than the ones that are already going bad in my fridge. And I already have the seasonings I need. Things I need to buy. Breakfast sausage, the ground kind. Eggs, 6 count. Small enough to fit in my book bag because I'm taking my motorcycle to the grocery store instead of my car. Shredded cheese. Street flour tortillas. Something about the unwarmed flour ones that feel right to me. They remind me of those Lunchables, the pizza Lunchables that I'm not gonna lie, I still kind of eat to this day, even though they don't taste the same. Iced coffee and eye drops. What is it about the Publix deli seems to bend time around you? I used to joke that during their interviews when you're applying for a job at Publix, one of the questions they asked was, how slow could you make a sandwich? And they probably gave it to the person who answered at the slowest time. It doesn't really feel like a joke anymore. At least not when you're as hungry as I was while I was waiting. It feels like it would make logical sense for every Publix to put up some kind of border between the sandwich line and the hot bar line at the deli. It would probably prevent a lot of awkward interactions and unnecessary questions like, are you waiting in the line for the sandwiches or over here? Are you sure? It looks like you're waiting for both right now, and I kind of need to get these 3 sandwiches for my kids' dinner tonight. And all the meanwhile, 6 guests ahead of you, someone is spending 3 minutes deciding which mustard they want for their Tennessee hot chicken tender sub, as if they've never heard of mustard before. Actually, can you scrape the mayonnaise off? I changed my mind about it. No, you don't have to start over. I just don't want to waste your time. The minutes fade away around us like a black hole. While everyone is outside, starting a family, or saying goodbye to a friend for the last time, I just want to pick my dinner up before we get another call. It's funny when you think about it. Nobody ever really asks if you're waiting for something when you aren't lined up for something. All the years we used to queue up in front of Walmart hours after we ate our Thanksgiving turkeys, and sometimes skipping the turkeys completely for Black Friday. It always appeared that we were clearly waiting for the sales to begin, whether the store was actually closed or not yet. And when you're waiting to get your license renewed at the DMV, the clerk behind the desk will ask you what service you're waiting for because you were in line. Nobody asks if you're waiting for something when you're not in a designated waiting area. Nobody ever asks what you're waiting for if you're just existing. Does nobody care that I'm waiting? Waiting for something? Waiting for one of my friends to text me back so that I know they're still alive. I'm waiting for Jamie Isaac to drop his new album that he's been teasing singles for. Hoping that one song with King Cruel that I've been listening to since 2021 is on there. Cause God damn it, I just get tired of waiting through SoundCloud ads to finish just so I can hear one of my favorite songs. Feels like I've been waiting for a while, to the point I forgot what I'm even waiting for. And maybe it already happened, but since I forgot to look forward to it, it just breezed on past me. Like that pale yellow school bus always seemed to do in the spring of 7th grade, right when my dreams started to get good. Mom, it happened again. I'm sorry. I wanted to go to the park today to hike up good old Indian seats, but I'm so sleepy. I got my normal 5 hours of sleep plus iced coffee, but something about it being a Wednesday just compels me to lie down and let the recovery phase begin on me. 5 p.m. rolled around, and I figured by the time I made it to the park and began the ascent, it would be time to come down before I got relaxed. Damned hour plus of traffic. Some days I need to just sit down anyway. It's a new feeling for me. A lot of days I go until the atrophy kicks in, and it always starts with my legs. The jellification of my muscles turns my thighs and calves into a strawberry flavored mess. Then the exhaustion creeps up into my basal ganglia, until I wonder why I have a headache. Oh yeah, it's because it's my 4th day in a row, up for 21 hours, and I've only had about 3 hours of uninterrupted sleep. And when my memory begins to fade, I always forget why I can't remember. Thank God for the photos. They don't need a lot of me. Working in the same county as where my parents live, it's been evolving into different meanings for me over the last year. Originally, there was an overall weight of inadequacy that lingered on my mind, for the fact that I would be married to the area where I grew up. Originally, it made me feel a bit like a failure. I always dreamed of getting a real boy job and moving far away from this area I grew up in. Not because I disliked it or the majority of experiences I had around here, it just felt like I wasn't meant to be here all my life. I saw the stories of kids that grew up on the football team in middle school. They had a blasted prom and went on to college to get their English degrees. They became teachers at the elementary school they went to, 2 miles away from their high school. They married the girl they started dating in 11th grade, her a freshman at the time, and they visited their 10-year high school reunion after they barely pulled together a last-minute babysitter for the boy they had together. Because the first one canceled on him because she'd rather sneak vape hits through her jacket collar while on the third screening of whatever movie she paid to see 2 tickets ago. And now that boy starts 3rd grade across the hall from their dad's class. That boy goes on to join the junior varsity baseball team at the same high school his granddad played at. It just wasn't a life I could see myself in, maybe because I never really cared for team sports. I thought I was better than the environment I was in, not knowing that I was the environment that I was in. There's an argument in favor of solipsism in there somewhere, but that's for another journal entry. It took me years to realize who actually gets a snowflake in hell if I leave here or not. New people are always coming in and out of this town, people that don't know me, people that just want to have peace and calm, having their own families, and sweating over the grill, telling their neighbors keep all that racket down for Christ's sakes. It's a work night. Silly promises I made to my younger self that didn't know what was going on in the world. Self that didn't know that I would never truly know anything at all. His dreams were buried in my backyard under the oak tree. A dandelion grew over them, and we cut that dandelion. This is good grass. I didn't pay all that money in fertilizer to grow weeds after all. Today I saw an address awfully close to my parents' house on our dispatch app. Every firefighter fears that his own house will burn down while they're at work, but I don't live in the county that I work at, and the walls of my apartment are made of concrete. Flooding is funny, you know? Now, I always joke that one day we'll all have oceanfront property, and then our land value will immediately become $0. It's fun to watch the tide rise when your house isn't in that flood zone, but when your mailbox starts getting inundated with more than just bills, it becomes less of a water cooler story to tell at work after the weekend. What if one day I check our dispatch app and I know the address, and the patient description matches someone that I've known since I was born? You know, what then? October 10th, 2024. There was a block party on my street a couple days ago, and since it was planned by an organization, it was more or less street fair. Vendors in the upper tens of numbers in their tent covered booths selling everything from an assortment of natural candles scented after a haphazard of three combined words, like the name came after the smell, not the other way around. Everything from that to hip and trendy tote bags that would fit in perfectly for the 36 to 42-year-old age bracket. It's coupons for whatever establishment they're representing that day, handing out the promise to honor us an opportunity to one day spend money with them. Sure, we're saving 15% off on gutter cleaning, but that's still $300 more than we'd spend if we never heard the service in the first place. Maybe they expected us to be traveling from our homes to visit this event instead of walking outside down the street from our apartments that don't have gutters. Dogs everywhere. Brown, gray, blonde, black, all connected to fun pattern leashes, which were connected to the inevitable Rex, get back here. And sorry about that. Sure, you can pet her. Cops on bicycles whom, if you actually get down to the point of it, could only really prevent crime by calling for other cops in more capable vehicles. Smell of barbecue in the air, seasoned by the smell of $4 french fries, drink not included. Sunlight on rough paved roads that jostled the air above it. It was warm enough for shorts, but not warm enough to sustain that heat after the sun left. Laughter cross-faded in between trendy electronic remixes of songs I've never heard before being mixed live over acceptable quality speakers. Signs that led to temporary places that wouldn't exist after 6 p.m. I ended up outside during it because it was my first day off and I wanted to skateboard. I remember seeing the preview of an email that stated our street would be closed to through traffic, but I was transporting a patient at the time and didn't have time to open the email before I forgot about it. The streets were cleared of any vehicle travel, and I thought it would be the best time to have the first time where I can skate in the street without fear of being hit by someone texting and driving. Sure, I've had times where my board ended up in the road, but returning to the sidewalk was more of a task that relied on speed and precision than leisure. It's funny how much a city can allocate funds to bring out one-bed apartments without parking decks for $2,000 a month plus first and month's rent, and a Starbucks in walking distance for every unit. They cannot seem to find the funds to repave the road or at least get rid of the egregious potholes. Maybe it raises the value of the properties, gives the area a historic feel, like how Savannah, Georgia has the cobblestone streets and an unspoken agreement to not sue them when you twist your ankle in the spaces in between them. I think they do it on purpose so us rebels can't skate on them, like all the brick sidewalks in Washington, D.C. Our tiny wheels are small enough that they barely don't fit in between the gaps. Longboard privilege. I skate regardless. Ironically, in all these places where I go when I'm not allowed in the street. These places filled by all the visitors. While I was skating, I was just a person occupying space in the area where this event was taking place. I live here. Why should I be uncomfortable in my own block? All the people that work in the shops recognize me. Hey, it's that guy that skates and takes our water cups but never buys anything. Now, I was on the inside of the event, but not a partaker. An alien on my own terrain. The kids noticed me. Some asked me to do tricks I couldn't do, and they didn't know the difference when I did something entirely different. Their parents avoided their gaze and steered their kids clear of it all the time. Don't grow to be like that guy. He isn't at church right now. And neither were they. I had AirPods in my ear and sweat on my neck. I wasn't going to change anybody's mind right now. I saw one of my friends from the neighborhood right as I was about to head back inside for the day. It was only about 4 p.m. The event had at least an hour before it was time for everyone to return to their normal Sunday antics, watching whatever episode of a series that only decides to capture its audience around the time where they're supposed to be in bed. Still those precious hours of sleep. You don't need Dream of Dragons. We got you covered. Trust us, coffee will help you in the morning. Rest is the enemy of productivity. I had no initial plans of actually partaking in the perusing of booths and spending money I could instead use for video games, but it had been a while since I had seen a friend outside of moral obligation. I was damp, needed a shower. So did a lot of people out there. Yo, it's mad people out here, I think is the first thing I said to him. We had made the agreement to hang out eventually, as he only lives a few units up and away from me, but bills don't pay themselves, and time is the only resource we can't buy with it anyway. I like seeing people by accident. All my favorite recent memories were when I had walked outside by myself and ended up with a group of people with me. It's like Katamari, where instead of collecting manhole covers and dust, I was collecting people that I won't see again for months and memories that I would coat photographs with. He agreed that there were a lot of people out there. More people than I had ever seen in Atlanta in one place at a time, sans sporting events and protests. Atlanta is a strange city. My part of town even more. Everything is close enough that you don't need to drive, but still too far to walk in your good clothes. It could be the Chick-fil-A, it's half a mile down the street, but between all the hills and crosswalks that cars don't stop at, and the air that feels like you're swimming in it despite it only being in the mid-80s, you just end up uncomfortable by the time you get there. Never mind the fact that you're going to have to walk back as well, and how is it uphill in both directions? He told me that he was overstimulated by all the people around, doubled by the fact that he had to navigate his dog through all the potty breaks and people wanting to pet her as well. Now, I didn't realize I was overstimulated as well, not until I picked my skateboard up and held it in my hand. I was more distracted by the only 3 tricks that I've been trying to perfect over my last 6 years of skating to mild success. I didn't realize that throughout all the gaps of people that I was weaving in between while I was skating, that I hadn't seen a single person. I saw shoes and shorts and jackets or t-shirts, but no faces. I usually don't see faces unless I know I'm supposed to be looking at someone. I could leave my house for an entire evening and never see a nose or a haircut, despite the fact that I was surrounded by people. Maybe I was just too focused on what I was doing to notice anybody around me more than the fact that I knew I had to avoid them because I didn't want to run into them. Maybe that's why I didn't recognize my friend at first when he waved at me as I was barreling toward him. The rest of the afternoon was actually something I think I needed. I ended up going back inside for a few minutes after I met up with my friend because I needed to shower. I wasn't the only one coated in smog and people there, but I was one of the few that could change my circumstances in that very moment. I had begun drinking far earlier in the day after getting off work, and it was Sunday and my first day off. I could do whatever the hell I wanted. I initially planned to finish the half bottle of sake in my fridge from 2 nights before. Small bottle. I'm still mostly responsible. I would then fall asleep for a few hours before I lounge around on the patio for the rest of the day. The alcohol influenced me to instead buy Red Bull and try to supplement the 4 hours of sleep I had the night before. Red Bull turned into skateboarding, and for the most part, my brain was off on the Sunday. And that's what I wanted. October 12th, 2024. I wasn't feeling work yesterday. I woke up full of energy and had cold brew caramel macchiato before I shaved anyway. I wish for more than to have energy. I want to be energy. I left the house to start my 40-odd minute drive without that eyelid lag that you get when you don't have enough sleep, where it feels like you're microdosing a nap every time you blink. Going to work with energy is a weird feeling for me. I usually get there about 20 minutes before shift change, already anticipating my first nap. If I can make it to 11 a.m., I can eat my lunch, which will make me just tired enough to nap for maybe 20 minutes or so. And if I get lucky, everybody else will have a drama-free lunch at work at their jobs. And I could sleep until about 1:30. It was a way to both give myself forgiveness for staying up the entire night before playing video games or watching a video essay when I should have been asleep, and as a way to pass those idle hours at work when I was at a station that didn't belong to my department. But yesterday, I had energy hours before I needed to replenish it, plus double from the coffee. I've been trying to get into coffee. I know people my age drink it to help them stay awake or focus when they have tasks to do. Some work it into their schedules so that it's something that keeps their day on track. Iced coffee in the morning with a hit of whatever brand electric cigarettes on their shelves at the gas station that week. Everyone at work drinks coffee, multiple cups a day. It's the blue colorway. Beams from South America keep us alive to make our Steel and Dodge automobiles that get shipped off to other countries to allow them to drive to their jobs. The chain of consumerism. I don't want to get into drinking coffee because it's what most of my coworkers do. I'd end up with a large truck and a tobacco addiction. Plus, I think I'm several hundred years too late to be a bandwagon on that trend, and I'm usually a forward thinker, so this would just be something that helps me. I just like the idea of sitting on a patio somewhere with a book in my hand and wasting the minutes away. Coffee shops are the ideal place for fast traveling, and maybe I'd actually end up making something productive while I'm there. The only problem I have is that I don't really like the taste of coffee, and the presence of all the MacBooks intimidate me slightly. Maybe I'll get into the nuances of collecting clones or amass a collection of books that I've only found interesting enough to read once. I'll dedicate a shelf in my home to them. I woke up in the same mood as I went to bed with. Intellectually frustrated, philosophically blue-balled. So close to reaching the answer in the conversation, but dropped right before we could get there. A while ago, I realized that sometimes I just need to speak. My brain works like an assembly line that produces thoughts independent of whatever media I've been consuming. Sometimes I just form questions or problems in my brain that must be attacked with thinking. Sometimes these questions form back to back without giving me time to sort out the first one. It makes a sort of mental pipe jam. I'm being jumped by my brain. The only way I can clear up this idea of constipation is by saying the thoughts out loud to people and letting them play with them for a while. I usually come up with my own solution to these questions while my audience ponders, so the act alone of flushing my brain is the best answer for me. Most days, almost all of the days, I don't have anyone to talk to. Anything beyond regular conversation like car wrecks or lunch plans or whatever new song just dropped. I need to go further. I need to knock on a part of someone's brain that can colorize the black and white topics that I've brought about. But that takes trust and knowing and realizing that there's more into a joke than the humorous part. And most days, I don't have that. I was so close to reaching it. Whatever topic that had been beating on my mind cellar door for the last few months, I almost answered it right in front of myself, with someone else present. But the batteries died and the SD cards ran out of memory, and I was left again to wait for an indefinite amount of time to be relieved of my quandaries, all throughout my sleep and into my job the next day. I haven't been on social media in a few days. That's not a grand achievement. Many people across the world have not, are not, and will not ever use Instagram, whatever they call Twitter now, or whatever apps keep them connected to people that will only ever be strangers. For me, it's something I used to do sporadically in the summer months. Deactivate my accounts and then deactivate the part of my brain that would check my phone, anticipating some silent notification coming in that says, "Hey, someone wants to talk to you." Despite the fact that I have my vibration on, ringer on, a screen that will light up upon notification, and a device that shakes my entire wrist with alerts. I usually try to meet new people on the internet, just to expand the selection that I have immediately around me. Although people on my block come from all different places across the globe, maybe someone on the internet that's 2 blocks away will have some more profound knowledge instead. That one in the bush isn't worth as much. Or the one in the hand. Usually I go on a streak of meeting great people. People with ideas I've never heard before, or a taste in food that I would have never tried by myself. I'm in these people's lives for an episode or two before I go on to guest star in someone else's life for a few episodes or so. And I meet someone that disillusions me to the entire comedy. Whether they have an overall attitude I just don't prefer, or we aren't compatible in any way. It reminds me that not everyone is an oasis, and then my brain convinces me that maybe nobody is ever. All just the sand. So am I. So I deleted my apps, The whole ordeal just seemed too much for me. Being bombarded by the thoughts and lives of people I haven't seen in years or have never met at all. Dizzy and nauseated, I found myself out of the loop. No more need to impress anyone that isn't near me anymore. I stayed in bed for an hour and a half more than I needed to the next day. Nobody would notice. By about 3 p.m., I felt better about being at work. Nothing amazing happened, but neither did anything consequential. I read a bit of David Foster Wallace's essay on television and fan fiction. It's funny how all the arguments he raised in favor and against TV don't matter anymore because nobody watches TV anymore. In this essay, he pointed out how the arguments he was using were no different than the ones of the writers before him talking about cars or the refrigerator. Our groundbreaking pieces of technology that antiquated the labor and effort we put into things before they were invented. How the people born before them damned them for all the ways they were going to poison future humans, shortening their attention spans and taking the edge off of life. How the consequences for the people born into the generation where the TV existed are unpredictable and unmeasured. Children aren't born with a television attached to their wrist. I just want to adopt to this new organ. He talked about how nobody on television watches television because that would be dull and disinteresting. Leaving the viewer to live a life of always looking for something exciting to distance himself from his dull and dreary daily schedule, without realizing that car chases or deep-sea diving or the burning passion of romance doesn't happen in front of a TV, especially not from a recliner. A whole culture built up around the production, viewing, and broadcasting of television. TV shows that talk about TV shows. Fiction being described by nonfiction. Journalists documenting the real lives of these fake people. Products made to enhance the viewing of TV sold only on TV. The separation of man from family. The TV is my heir now, Debbie. Go make my dinner and care for the 2.5 children and dog. Pop culture references that are put into real life to be talked about while watching TV, but nobody watches TV anymore, at least not like how we used to. Days aren't dedicated to tuning into non-stop marathons, episodes we've seen hundreds of times already, patiently waiting for that series finale. It's been teased since the beginning of the season. All to end it all. All the commercials decorated in between these shows, influencing what beverage we're drinking with the TV meal we have on our TV tray. Besides the news and sports, TVs are mainly just Netflix boxes or Roku City bus stores. And these tasks are moving to the way of the phone more and more each day. TV is rarely a social event today. Give me my personal pan pizza-sized smartphone. I want to watch the show by myself, and I'll be damned if I let you spoil this episode a minute before I reach the end myself. And pretty soon I found myself sharing Foster Wallace's arguments on TV with the smartphone. Living in the city made me, in a way, forget about stars. Obviously, my acknowledgement of their existence affected them in zero way, shape, or form, but it's kind of funny how I can forget something because it isn't there. I mean, I've known for a while that my sense of object permanence started to decay almost promptly after it developed. And maybe that's why I feel like nobody thinks of me when I'm not around. I mean, I see the sun every day, right? And that's our closest star. Where I'm stationed at now is further into the rural parts of town than somehow all the other rural parts of town. I think the only differentiating factor is that the lights on the station are positioned in a way that point more to the ground than out into the woods or the road. There aren't any visitors or late night traffic, so nobody really needs to seek our presence, unless they already know or they already knew where we were during the daylight. Less light pollution, more light from beyond. The moon was about half full, on its way to become something more entirely, and then a little bit less later. There were still hundreds of stars above me. I hadn't looked at the stars in so long. And it's funny how many of them look like Mercury when you don't have a telescope. I envy the man who can step back inside from nature and not have a single thought. I wonder what that's like.